Sniper versus Widowmaker. Not that one. An epic stat battle of history, if you will. In this video, we're going to compare the stats of this perfectly formed, sexy specimen and this old thing. Oh, sorry, wrong way around. I'll be focusing on their primary weapons and the average amount of damage they are capable of inflicting per second when consistently hitting fully charged headshots. And we will also only be looking at the stock rifle from TF2, else we would be here all day. These videos are always good fun to make as I genuinely learn a bunch of new things when I'm looking closely at the detailed stats and mechanics for a certain hero or class. And although there are tons of rap battles and SFM videos already out there, I couldn't find anyone who has compared the two games from this perspective. So I hope you enjoy these videos as much as I enjoy making them, but please be sure to let me know in the comments below. Before we jump into the video, it's important to understand that a single unit of health or damage in one game does of course not necessarily equate to the same value in another game. For this reason, I've been using a HP ratio which I calculated using what I've been calling the baseline HP value, essentially working with the assumption that the most commonly occurring health pool for a class in TF2 is equal in value to the most commonly occurring health pool for a hero in Overwatch. So that would mean 125 TF2 health points equals 200 Overwatch health points, or 1 TF2 HP equals 1.6 Overwatch HP. So for all comparisons in this video, I'll be converting damage numbers using this ratio, which means dividing Overwatch values by 1.6. It's not perfect, but it's better than a direct one-to-one comparison, and it's also very similar if you were to use the overall average health pool in each game, which I've also looked at in the past, and which is also a great alternative to my method. If you want to learn more about my thinking and the steps I took to arrive at this ratio, then please check out my previous videos in this series. But with that out of the way, and without further ado, let's jump into it. So all we need to do is find out the damage of a fully charged headshot and the interval between each shot, making sure we take into consideration the time to zoom in, the recovery time if applicable, and of course the charge time. I have to say that when I started researching Sniper, there were some stats that I found pretty ambiguous. Take a look here, we have the attack interval, the maximum charge timer, the zoom in charging delay, and the zoom in headshot delay. What does it all mean? I decided to take a little bit of time to actually measure myself how long it takes for each animation to occur to make sure I understood properly what all these stats meant. I didn't expect to be able to do this perfectly, but the timings I took would help to indicate what exactly each of these stats are referring to. So I measured zooming in to be about 0.11 seconds, the charge without the zoom to be 3.21 seconds, the interval between shots without scoping in to be 1.52 seconds, and the total interval between fully charged shots, this was 4.56 seconds. And working back from that last number, it became clear to me that the total time between fully charged shots was very likely to be the max charge timer, which is 3.3 seconds, plus the zoom in charging delay, which is 1.3 seconds. And this adds up to 4.6 seconds, which is very close to what I got with my timings. So a fully charged headshot for Sniper is 450 damage. Divide that by the interval between each shot, which we now know is the charge time plus the zoom in charge delay. That's 450 damage every 4.6 seconds. And that gives us a total of 97.8 DPS. Nice. Okay, so over to Widowmaker. Again, some fairly vague terms used here. I definitely think these could be worded much more clearly in my opinion. So we have a charge time, we have the recovery time before it starts charging again, and we have the scoping in and out time. Again, I measured these animations myself. These were the figures I got. So 0.3 seconds for zooming in, 0.92 seconds for charging a shot, and that excludes zooming in. The interval between shots, you can't actually do no scope shots, but by very quickly scoping in and taking a shot, I measured 0.35 seconds for this particular stat. And finally, between scoped, fully charged shots, I measured 1.52 seconds. Again, working backwards, it becomes clear to me that the overall time between two fully charged shots is the 0.9 seconds charge time plus the 0.5 seconds recovery time, which gives us a total of 1.4 seconds, pretty close to what I measured. And I think this makes sense because, as I said, you don't have to zoom in or out between each shot, so I think it's just a matter of adding these two values together. If you spot anything I've missed, let me know in the comments below. So 300 damage every 1.4 seconds gives us a grand total of 214.3 DPS. Let's convert that over to TF2 DPS by dividing by 1.6, and that leaves us with 133.9 DPS. And there we have it. Widowmaker has a considerably higher DPS than Sniper. And to be fair, this surprised me quite a bit. Okay, thanks for watching. But hold your horses. There's a little more to it than that. A lot more, in fact. What about the health, the speed, the clip size, all of these other factors that have a huge impact on your gameplay? Well, I've devised a convenient little table to help us look at some of these equally important stats. I've indicated the winning cells in green, although in some cases, bear in mind, there really isn't much in it. The health we can ignore, as we are assuming that they have the same or the equivalent value of health, so next up we're taking a look at the speed. I won't bore you with the maths for this one, but because we know that the sniper moves at 300 hammer units, we can accurately work out his speed to be 5.7 meters per second, so we can see that their speeds are really very similar. I found it really interesting to learn that actually every hero in Overwatch except Genji and Tracer move at this exact same speed, which makes me wonder, how does this fat munter walk at the same speed as this nimble lass? As for the speed you move once you're scoped in, this is the one area in which the sniper does win out, with Widowmaker being much more slow and vulnerable when she's scoped in. Although, to be fair, when it comes to mobility in general, I think we'd have to give that one to Widow. The rate of fire we have pretty much covered, although this figure does not take into account the reload time for Widowmaker. The clip size is also hugely important, especially due to the fact that with Widowmaker you don't have to descope between shots, and this allows Widow to get kill streaks in a fight much more easily, as well as I think making her more forgiving to play. Reload time is also surprisingly pretty much the same, and ammo, well, Infinity is a bit more than 25, to be fair. And a few other final mechanics that I found really interesting. Firstly, the two different ways in which the game discourages camping, or at least gives the enemy a clue as to where you are. The first one being the red dot visible on walls, and the second one being tracer rounds. One gives you away before you shoot, and the other one gives you away afterwards. I would argue that in my experience the dot is easier to work around, whereas when you're firing tracer rounds, the enemy is definitely going to know where you are. It's really kind of unavoidable. The damage scales linearly for both characters when they are zoomed in, but I wasn't aware that there was such a long delay before the sniper rifle begins to charge. Presumably this is to further reduce the effectiveness of quickscoping, but I'm not too sure. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And finally, I'm sure you already knew this, but the sniper's dot of course becomes clearer as the shot charges, and for Widow, if the power is below 50%, her gun makes a softer sound and leaves a smaller trail. A couple of nice bits of additional feedback for the players as they're using the weapons. Blimey, that's a lot of stats. So a couple of things before we finish up. Firstly, you may have noticed that the sniper technically has some other weapons at his disposal, about 17 to choose from in total, and this really enables him to keep his gameplay fresh to the extent of even effectively making him a different class entirely when he uses the Huntsman. Well, I wanted to keep this video simple and focus on their primary weapons and those stats that are more easily comparable. Of course, it's clear to see that they both have very similar machine guns as their secondaries, and I think that would be interesting to look further into to see how the damage compares here. Widow also has the amazing grappling hook ability that is completely invaluable to her gameplay and allows her to escape tricky situations as well as easily reach high ground. We could even have gone as far as comparing melee damage too, although bear in mind that melee attacks in TF2 always crit, so Sniper would have the upper hand on that front. But we had to draw the line somewhere, and that's why we just stuck to their primary weapons. A couple of the biggest takeaways for me. One, Widow is insanely powerful, but she does have some meaty opponents to contend with, and a lot of these things. Annoying shields. And the second thing that definitely surprised me is that there's a lot more to the mechanics of a video game sniper rifle than first meets the eye, and I imagine a lot goes into fine-tuning these stats to make the gun feel just right. I would argue that Sniper and Widowmaker are the two most similar characters between these two games in terms of their stock kit and basic gameplay. True, there are some similarities between Soldier and Pharah, or Engie and Torb, but when you play these, you soon realise that they feel very different. So it's interesting to see how both games have balanced the classic sniper class and how different or similar their stats are. I was wondering, if we assume that both games are reasonably balanced within themselves, then seeing as Widowmaker is so much more powerful than Sniper, maybe it's fair to say that the abilities of the heroes in Overwatch are generally more powerful than what we see for the classes in TF2. And I don't just mean damage, it could be other things of course, like shields or movement abilities. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in the comments below. Both are iconic archetypes of the sniper class and both provide that satisfying raw FPS gameplay that many of us crave. On paper, by my calculations at least, Widow seems to have more DPS as well as better mobility, but to be fair, there are no shields to protect the heads of those TF2 players. Fortunately, we don't have to choose between the two. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to join my Discord, follow me on Twitter, come join us on Twitch when I stream, and I'll see you guys in the next video.